Hey everyone, we have another great episode of the ROL Radio ahead for you. But before we get there, please remember to share our posts, hit the like, subscribe, download, or whatever other button there is, and please leave us a review wherever you listen. This will help us to continue bringing you the great content and amazing guests you have come to expect. Now, let's get to the show. Today's guest has been turning negatives into positives his entire life. Whether it was overcoming financial hardships, bullying, or an illness that threatened his ability to even walk, much less train Jiu Jitsu, Andre Terencio has used what he has learned through the art to overcome any obstacles life has put in front of him. Andre shares those lessons and how they shaped his mindset, turning him into a highly regarded instructor, an instructor who has trained multiple world champions, opened the incredibly successful Brazil 021 Academy with locations around the world, and founded the nonprofit Brazil 021 Project. Here's ROL Radio with the truly inspirational Andre Negao Terencio.
Welcome to ROL Radio.
And we are live. Gary, how are you?
I'm good. Real quick before we get to the guest today, once again, go to therolradio.com and take the little survey there, and you are automatically entered to win a free Fuji gi. We have given away five, which is pretty impressive, I think. They've got great products. Check them out. My favorite gis are Fuji gis. And all you got to do to win is take it's a one question survey. How easy can it get?
You know, the cool stuff about Fuji that they just released that a brand new super light model of the gis, and I'm ordering some. I'm ordering some for the academy, so it's maybe the unofficial word just got released. But anyhow, I got my coffee. I'm ready to. I'm ready to talk about it. But before we jump into our guest, man, I'm stumbling today. Before we jump into our guest, listen, you guys start leaving reviews on our website, and we talked about this briefly. In the previous episodes, but you can go to our website, therolradio.com. You can leave a review, what you think about the show, all that helps us out. But I want to read one of them here because we had Dustin left us a review very recently, and he said, well, awesome shit. That's all he said. I'm going to just leave it at that. I'm not a big supporter of, that language, but listen, he clearly likes it. So, it's worth mentioning.
And it's short and sweet.
Yeah. Leave us a review on our website. It's right on the front page. And then we'll, every episode, we'll try to drop the names and see who left what, and just be honest about it. Life is good. Anyhow, Professor, how are you, sir? How are you doing? Professor Andre in the house. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Thank you guys for having me. I'm so excited to spend some time with you guys, ROL Radio. And I heard a couple interviews, and I'm so excited. So it's such an honor to be here. So I'm blessed to meet you guys.
Oh, well,
Pleasure's ours.
Thanks for being here. I recently, you've done several of these, conversations in this format, but recently I heard something interesting that you said on another podcast, and I do believe it was with Professor Dantas, but you said one of the things that's interesting or mind-blowing about jiu-jitsu is that being on the bottom does not mean that you are losing.
Yeah.
Why do you think that's so fundamental?
So it is a fundamental because jiu-jitsu is the only martial arts in the world where it can provide the person to be on the bottom from the eyes of somebody outside of jiu-jitsu community, unless if you're in a mount position. And even though being on the bottom in the mount position doesn't mean the fights end, because at the end of the day, the fights only ends when they bell the ring. But as long as you're still fighting, the time is still on, you can always try to find a way either to survive and even escape. You understand? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about mount position. Now, change the position, speaking about like a guard, is the most powerful position for a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Of course, a lot of people would love to be on top, but if you're on the bottom playing guard, so doesn't mean you're losing. You're still fine. You're still able to reverse. You're still able to submit. And that's what I keep telling my students, in the beginning of the pandemic, okay, how to apply jiu-jitsu on your life. okay? And it doesn't mean you're losing, okay? The opponents put a lot of pressure on us, but you have to always kind of like try to find a way to reverse the situation. So that's why I was kind of like acknowledge what I make and always trying to like encourage my students and remind them about the power of, of jiu-jitsu, especially like white belts, because it's kind of hard. And then as soon as they kind of like, they understand that the concept, they blow their minds. So
Yeah, you're not the first one who actually used the analogy of pandemic being very similar to jiu-jitsu. It's like we find ourselves in this situation when things are completely out of our control. There's really not much we can do about it. We just kind of coexist, and sometimes jiu-jitsu is in a very similar situation, especially if we find ourselves on the bottom. Sometimes our partner is stronger. They have more experience. They might be even heavier, and we feel overwhelmed, right? What's your recipe, or what's your thought on these situations where we feel powerless? There's nothing we can do. We want to, but just like we don't know where to go, what to do. What's your train of thought on that?
it's very, to me, it sounds like a crazy, but like as somebody who has been doing the same thing like jiu-jitsu for over 30 years, so I'm 43, okay, and I have been doing jiu-jitsu since when I was 11. And one of the most important lessons, or the takeaways from jiu-jitsu that I apply in my life is no matter how hard, how heavy the person's on top of you, as long as you're still breathing, okay, and you're still able, I mean, unless if you tap, it's like we die. But as long as you're alive, so let's keep moving forward and trying to work on our patience, because jiu-jitsu, we cannot go crazy, right? It's not a strike. Even a strike, you have some strategy, okay? But jiu-jitsu gives you like provides any individual the capability. You start to develop. It is the mental game. That's why it relates to the chess a lot, okay? Because if you're trying to go like, if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a patience, so you end up you're blocking yourself. You prevent yourself from progress, okay? And going back into the COVID, that's how I have been applying. And even during those classes, like a Zoom class, which like we cannot do so much, but I think the most important thing is to remind people, okay, to do some like a solo drills plus the mental part, okay, to change your mindset and like, okay, whatever I'm doing this. So just visualize somebody mounting you. How can you escape? You need the bridge. Sounds silly for some people, but I did apply this, myself. It works really well. Now, slowly, I can feel things are getting back to the normal, but it's still, then I realized like I had no idea how powerful jiu-jitsu is. I mean, for my, as a jiu-jitsu practitioner, somebody who believes is like 100%. You understand? But yes, patient, work on your patience, because like if you're trying to be too ahead of the game, if you're trying to go crazy, you end up getting inside of a trap, right? Same like in the pandemic. You in the beginning, okay. If you don't stay healthy, if you don't work, like okay, when people are saying like, "Oh, you're gonna stay home," and by the way, I have no political party. I have no side. My my flag is jiu-jitsu. My flag is to stay healthy. Okay, that's the priority, and empower people to do things like the positive things. Okay, but there's a certain time, like during the beginning of the pandemic, we all had to stay at home, and how we had to do this, right? So applying apply jiu-jitsu, like okay, man, now I have to kind of like, man, I remember like a couple of days, during in the beginning, it was really hard for me to deal with this, and I had to remind myself like, you had been through the worst, you understand, and you survive, you're still alive. All you have to do, just stay calm now and do what, what can you do now? If you have somebody on top of you in a mount position, now there's a times like during the roll when you, all you can do is just wait for your opponent to do something, then you'll be able to do something else. Because usually another knowledge what I like to use with my students is like jiu-jitsu is like a trade. To get something, you have to give something, right?
Oh,
Nice.
explain that. I like that. Explain that.
Yes, to get something is all about setup. Now, during the situation, we cannot give too much, but you can work on our patients, because now we're in a situation where we had our invisible opponent on top of all of us, right? And choking, submit a few people in the world. It's not a lot, but like, look, what can I do now? Just breathe? No, just stay calm, work on my patient. Like, what can I do? Stay healthy, change my diet, work my patient, feed myself with good thoughts, read a nice book and do some exercise from home. Actually, I really did. And that's what I did. And then like a lot of our students, they were like join our, for instance, our Zoom classes wasn't just because of the exercise, but just the fact like, okay, they're not just doing like a silly drills, but they're doing silly drills. And myself and the other instructors, we always remind them about the power of jiu-jitsu, how to apply jiu-jitsu in a daily life.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about something really, really important, because essentially, if I'm getting this correctly, is what you're saying is that jiu-jitsu can be learned not only on the mats. I mean, being on the mats is really important, but we can learn jiu-jitsu from videos, from books, from Zoom classes, from a conversation with our instructors, our training partners. We can continue stimulating our brains, our minds. And if we take that approach and mats disappear, like in the scenario of pandemic, we can continue learning jiu-jitsu. Maybe it's not to the same extent that we used to, but we are still learning. We are still engaged. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree 100%, because like I said, I had been through the worst. So 22 years ago, I had tuberculosis on my spine, my bones. Okay, it was a rare disease, and none of the doctors in Brazil, I mean, a lot of doctors, they didn't know what to do. And then just finally, one guy, one of the best in South America, Dr. Esquitino, and then he realized in my spine, I had tuberculosis in my bone. Okay, don't ask me how I got this. They asked me like several questions. Anyway, make a long story short, so they had to remove. I have a fusion in my back, okay, with the titanium, okay. So they had to remove like 3 vertebrae from my back. I don't know if I said right, vertebrae. Can you guys follow?
Yeah. Yep.
So they had to remove those 3, but at the time I was in my primes as a brown belt. My prime, like getting in parties like in the nationals, in the Brazilian nationals, state tournaments, because back then we already had the worlds, but like was the worlds, nationals, and state tournaments in Brazil. Okay, those are the biggest tournaments back in the days. Anyways, I was on my primes and I had to deal with this. Okay, slowly, so I had a surgery, 2 months in the hospital, and back and forth. My life is gone, literally. That's what I thought at the moment.
Hold on. Before you get to this, how did you find out about this? I mean, how, like at which point, how is this impacting your life?
You're talking about the tuberculosis?
Yeah, the condition itself. Yeah.
Yes. So I started to have a fever, just a fever, and I was losing weight. And I was like, man, something wrong with me. And then like I was trying to hide this from my parents. And man, Andre, you need to go to the hospital. So finally they took me to the hospital. Then they found out, they did a test. So I had a tuberculosis, but I didn't have a cough. But no, I had nothing. It was just a fever and losing weight. Okay. Then I stayed in the hospital, right? And then they sent me back home. Oh, he's fine. But always I was like feeling like my back. And then one of the doctors said, oh, this is because he stayed for a long time. He stayed for 4 weeks. He's been like staying in the bed for 4 weeks. And that's why his back hurts.
So it was a symptom, not of the disease.
They said, Mom, there's something wrong. Then she took him to this guy, to the specialist. Okay, he's a neurosurgeon, Dr. Schettino, and then he found out. So he has to do some I don't know what kind of test, MRI. It wasn't MRI. They call tomography, but some pictures, and they saw a white things on my spine. So the tuberculosis was kind of like a tumor, basically, on my spine. Just became like a tumor on my spine.
So they have to remove that in
They
order
had
for
to
this to not
remove
get
those
worse.
because I only had like a 20% of chance to walk because I couldn't even walk. I couldn't even walk. I was getting the walk like the name of the guy, uh, my back.
A hunchback?
Hunchback. Yeah, it was
Hunchback?
exactly like that. Just pretty
Yeah.
much walk like this. I couldn't even keep my body straight.
So was it in your thorax or in?
It was my thorax.
Okay. So below the neck, above the lumbar. All right. Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
So, all right. So wait a minute. So you go from, you were a brown belt. You were in your 20s, early 20s or teens, late teens?
Early 20s, yes.
Yeah. And you are in the toppest level of physical activity right now. You're competing constantly. You're the best that you can be. And then literally one day you'll find out, whoa, hold up. Like there's 20% chance that you're going to walk again. Like this is going from being on an awesome track to being, pretty good with jiu-jitsu to we changing the direction to forget about doing jiu-jitsu again. You might not walk.
Yes.
What's going through your head?
Honestly, like what I thought was, I just, first of all, when this doctor finally, like, he found out exactly what I had, he just put him in a wheelchair and he said, no. He's not going to leave. He's going to stay here. And they said, what are you talking about? He goes like, no, you need to have a surgery. But we need to do more tests because since it was like a rare, so he had other cancer specialist, but luckily wasn't like a benign. Which one's the bad one? Benign.
Malignant is
malignant.
but malignant. It was not malignant.
Yeah, it wasn't malignant. Thank you. But he brought, so they had to come to check him out. They did like biopsy, and then the biopsy in your bones. Like, man, even if they put it like the anesthesia, it doesn't work on your bones. Forget about. So I had to deal with a lot of things, man. It was really hard back then. But this guy, he put me straight, my back straight, and I had to relearn how to walk. Everything else, one step by step. So, go ahead.
How long were you? Was it 2 years? Did you say?
No.
Or 2 months in the hospital?
2 months in the hospital, and it's about a year to slowly get back. I mean, after that, so he stayed like 2 months in the house, and slowly, like after my 6 week out, out of the hospital, I was going to my school because I already had my students. So I was assistant instructor of my professor, and I had my class. So then I slowly used to go, and then I got bored. I had to go there to see, my students, my teammates. I used to go there just to sit and watch. Mm-hmm. Okay. Can you guys follow me? So
yeah.
Yes. And I used to ask, so my ex-girlfriend would drive me to the school just to watch the class to clear my mind because I was sick of being home in hospital. Anyways, I was so skinny. I lost 50 pounds. And yeah, back then I was fighting as a middle heavy.
So you dropped down to light, ultra light? Yeah.
Light, yes. And so I used to go there just to watch the class, to see how people were doing, my students. And then slowly started to get more confident about just to sit in a chair. And I started yelling people hey, do this, do that. But I couldn't move. Right?
Who is that guy yelling at me? He can't.
Yes. But they were laughing. But it's funny because I was losing a lot of students. While I was in the hospital, I lost a lot of students. Mm-hmm. At the moment that they realized, I was going there just to watch the class. One by one were coming back. They were coming back. Mm-hmm. It was amazing. It was like, wow. And that's why I kept I was getting more motivated to go back there, So anyways, but even though in the back of my head I was like, man, this is not for me because how can I like roll, tell my student to do something what I'm not capable to do it. If I'm not capable to do it, I feel like, like a disabled person, like handicapped. Now that's how I felt at the moment. I have to be honest. And that's when I started to think about quitting and doing something else. Does that make sense? So that's why I said in the beginning of our conversation, I had been through the worst because stay home for me, honestly, no disrespect for the others, but it wasn't like a big deal because I had been through the worst. I almost like lost, I couldn't walk.
Yeah. You knew this time around that you weren't going to lose jiu-jitsu. It was still going to be there, right? You just had
Exactly.
to,
Yes. And I know we all know it's just a matter of time. So, and anyways, so then I met a guy. There's an old master. He passed away. Master Flavio Figueiredo is well known in Rio de Janeiro. He used to be, and actually was the person who introduced like Hanet to me. To start to join
Oh, really?
school. And he was like a mentor, and he used to do like jiu-jitsu. He was a cab driver too. Jiu-jitsu was kind of like his hobby, but he always liked to be involved. But the main source of his income was like he was a cab driver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So since he had the freedom to do whatever he wants, he used to come. So since he knew I was out of the hospital and going to the school, so he came to visit me one day. And he was the only person who I was 100% honest about my thoughts. And he looked at me and goes like, Andre, I'm glad you're back. Man, it's so good to see you, man. Look at you. You look great. It was like, great. Man, I lost I'm a little lightweight now, no nothing, I'm not rolling. I'm like, feel like, and he's like, no, you look good. And I said, so what's your goals now? What's your plan? And I said, my plan now, I think I'm gonna quit jiu-jitsu. I don't think I can do this anymore because I'm glad I'm alive, but it's not for me. He's like, what are you talking about? But like during our conversation, you were talking like outside of the school. There's several kids like a training, like teenagers, adults, competitors, like my students. They were like a training. We had like I don't know, 30 people on the mat in the day. It was a full class. And you look at me, goes like, Andre, do you think those kids, over there, they're there just because you're tough? No, they're there because they believe in you and they trust in you and they want to be like you. It's not about how tough you are. Plus, now is the time where you learn jiu-jitsu the most because before you used to think like your mindset is just competitor mindset. Now is be the time when you really will learn like jiu-jitsu and take this opportunity to become a great teacher, instructor. And you're like, yes, he's right. I went home and said, okay. But on the way home, I was like, I said, man, he's right. Because he said, now you're going to like focus more like in the small details what you're not used to because there's a part of your body, you're like physically strong, you could go harder than everybody else. And there's no longer, for now, at least for now, for a while. But I can see you because you already make a lot of like it's not tough kids, but very technical. You have a very technical students, but you can be becoming even better now. You can go. There's a time for you to go to the next level as an instructor. Man, this really like taught me. I was like, he goes like, don't quit because they need you. Like, Then I started to put in my gi because I wasn't even putting my gi. Even though I couldn't move, I couldn't just teach like sit in a chair, just watch and yell at them. Then I started to kind of like to see like more details. So that's the kind of mindset helped me not to quit jiu-jitsu. And I learned how to apply all those things that I had been doing since like, when I was 11 years old. And then have this amazing person in my life. That was a real master, I would say, right? Mm-hmm. Only like somebody on this level to look at you and say like, no, that's when we start to learn now. Because man, you already have you have a solid game. You have a solid jiu-jitsu. You have a strong foundation. You had a great professor, my professor, Carlos Henrique. So you have all the tools to succeed. But I said, well, what about my body? Yes. And he said, eat well, you come back. Man, he was a visionary. He knew it. And then ever since, then I had Haned come and like join me. And I had other students like Queixinho, Augusto Queixinho, Marcos Antelante, who's in Texas. I'm talking about like the students who became more successful in jiu-jitsu, but wasn't just the best technique, but I was capable to be a good, to be a good leader and go through like the small detail. You understand?
Mhm.
So, and I started to develop the other side of my brain instead of like, oh, let me do this because I used to do back in the days like smash pass. I used to play invert guard. Now I cannot play upside down anymore because I don't want to deal with somebody like fold me. I'm talking to you just as a professor, teacher, jiu-jitsu instructor. I'm not even talking to you about the jiu-jitsu practitioner, like rolling people. That's a different story. But basically, the conversation with this guy just completely changed my life. And if I became who I am in jiu-jitsu, as a good, I'm not bragging about it, but like as an instructor, it was because of this guy. Because everything now, even though I can see, I developed the skill to see somebody rolling and I can decode,
Yeah.
decode someone's game.
Mhm.
Like creating strategies. Big part of the Hanet success was just like, hey, your opponent go this way. Like the hand. Look how many times you bring the hand on the side. Like these small details that makes a huge difference, right? And it was all because of these guys.
So go back. So go back in your mind, like to that point when that conversation took place. What if, humor me here, what if this conversation didn't take place? Where do you think you would be right now?
I would be doing something different. By the way, I'm a how do you say hustler?
Hustler.
Yeah, hustler. So since a kid, like because I came from humble beginnings, and I sold like garlic in the street market. I parked the car all to make money. I used to carry like groceries for all the ladies in the grocery store by my house. Everything for money, always. But I would be like doing something completely different. And I'm very thankful to these guys, not only because I became like successful in what I do, but also my lifestyle. Everything what I do is related to jiu-jitsu and jiu-jitsu, and then all I do is all positive. See what I'm saying? The way how I eat, the way how I live my life, my lifestyle. Can you imagine? I would be a completely different person because I would say 90% of my childhood friends, they always like, they all are like overweight, some of them like, they would die, heart problems, diabetes. And man, I'm very thankful for that. Right.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, it
absolutely.
puts you in a good spot.
I think today, once we go, as we're going through this pandemic and this situation, it's kind of, I think the light is end of the tunnel. We're kind of getting out of this, but it's still, I think, hard for a lot of people to stop themselves from complaining and start, saying, oh, this really sucked. Last year was so terrible. And they find all these excuses. And then I'm listening to you and like, all I'm going to say to all my students, like, just be quiet. You have no place to complain about anything. Zero. Listen
We've
to this
talked.
guy. I mean,
We've talked about this before, though, and we've talked about it within jiu-jitsu as well. But it's a game of adaptation, right? You have to adapt to whatever's going on. And we talked about this many times where people didn't adapt. They went home, they shut off the lights at their academy, and all they did was complain, right? And other people who came out on the other end of it and who still have great places, they adapted. Whether it was bringing the amount of students they had down, doing Zoom classes, closing their school to open another one, whatever, they kept adapting. And it sounds like, obviously you did the same thing.
I think now the most important, I don't think it's now. I think we all need to focus on the solution instead of focus on the problem. It's funny when you have a student, like when I see my students make face, like rolling their eyes when they're like somebody like score points on them. And I say, don't waste your time because now the guy's already in your head. Why don't you like, I would rather to like close your eyes and try to, figuring out how you're going to reverse the situation, overcome, because the time when you expand your, I would say, waste, a whine about like, oh, no, man, if they don't say that, but like, F this, man, he swept me or got caught. We just get worse, right? Because we start to like, oh, my jiu-jitsu sucked. I'm not as good as I should. Look, now he's smashing me. But like, look, if you think about the faults and solution, of course, there's several guys in your school, there's nothing, for instance, like, road with like Hanet is not fun. I mean, I'm joking, like, 7-time world champion, like, man, smashing you. Like, people have no idea how good she is, like, there's no space, she will not give you like an inch. And then we just get worse and worse. But it is what it is. She's like in another level. But I'm talking like, if I get swept by somebody, I try not to waste my time, even though I don't like to get swept or somebody passed my guard, scored a point, even a submission, whatever. I try to kind of like, okay, what can I do next? Okay, it is what it is, but I don't have time because let's say if I'm going to compete, master 3 is a 5 minutes max, right? If you waste your time and complain about, punching the man, and like think like, oh my gosh, man, how did I get caught in the sweep? Like, look, how can I sweep him back? I'm behind of the score, right? You almost got mine, so he has one advantage. People in life, it's always like that, You're like have like struggling financially, or the COVID, you might have to close your school. It's getting hard for you to pay the rent. Instead of focusing on solution, people like they complain about this and this. This is like, in general, that's kind of human nature. That should be different.
Well, we look for sympathy. We look for somebody to feel bad for us. But the problem is that even if they do, they're not fixing the problem. We just stuck in this sucky situations that we find ourselves in. So yeah, I tell my students all the time, just don't focus on the negative, focus on the positive. Focus on how can you figure out this. What are you going to do to make this better, period?
Yeah,
like that's the question. That's the question, right? And especially in the competition, sometimes we find ourselves in these positions where referee maybe makes a bad call. That's a very, very common situation, right? Oh, this didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. He didn't see
right.
It's not my fault. Who cares? It's not your fault. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Yep. You can fix it or you can stay where you are. And choice is yours. I mean, that's the bottom line, isn't it? Am I off on this?
Oh, 100%. I agree, man. You're right. Yep.
Listen, let's go back to the beginning. 11 years old. You're starting jiu-jitsu. What makes you get on the mat? How did it all start?
Actually, it's because I started in judo when I was 7 years old. So I started in judo.
Judo was pretty popular back then in Brazil.
Oh, yeah,
because every single person we talked to. Gary, who did we talk to recently?
Octavio.
Octavio. We were talking to Octavio. Yeah, we talked to
Leo Xavier. Petapano even started.
Petapano,
Everybody.
Yeah, it's like judo was it.
Yeah, in Brazil, yes, because we have a huge community of like Japanese community in São Paulo, and a lot of them, they used to do judo in Japan, and then they start to spread like going the other place, move to the United States of Brazil, and luckily some of them end up in Rio. But anyway, so I did a judo from 7 up to 11, and for whatever reason, I got bored. And I told my dad, I said, Daddy, because I was obese, first of all, and I had to do in sports. So I have a tendency to gain weight. And then my daddy said, okay, I understand you don't want to do judo anymore, but you have to do something. And I said, and he gave me like a list of like the options. I said, nah.
What was on the list?
Soccer.
I knew that.
I'm horrible. So nobody would have picked me like to play soccer like in my neighborhood, right?
You don't like soccer?
And he gave me a list, but like swimming, yes, I did swim, but I really want to do some like martial art. And he said, Wasn't like we don't call like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just say Jiu-Jitsu. And then he introduced me to Santana's Brothers Academy. Valdemar Santana, who fought Grandmaster Ilho, and I had the honor to train in it. I met his brother when I started to join the school. Valdemar already had passed, but I met his brother who used to treat me like a grandson. And back then, so I was 11 years old, and I stayed there for 3 years. Okay, but I wouldn't fit in the kids class because I was so big, and I wouldn't fit in adults class either because I was just a fat kid.
Yeah, we've got some of those as well. Yeah.
Right? I was so bad. Right? Like basically I was the warm up of the guys, right? But over here, boy, let's warm up. And then it would like, but the folks of the school was more like for, and back then it was Vale Tudo.
Yeah.
So there's jiu-jitsu specific for Vale Tudo. Then I had my classmate who used to do jiu-jitsu in Tijuca, Obledo. And then he said, like, hey, I do jiu-jitsu too. And I said, where? But man, I train 5 times a week. I used to do just twice, Tuesdays and Thursdays. I said, 5 times a week? But when he told me the price, man, I almost had a heart attack. I said, no, that's Mama.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, we have it wasn't an open mat, but you have like kind of open mat. We can bring a gas on Saturdays. Man, it was different, completely different world. People wearing gi. What I used to go was like kind of like visualize nowadays a MMA school. Basically, you see people on the side like wearing gi, the other side no gi. It's all mixed. Put a grab it, let's roll, and you see wearing your gi. No, everything over there is very well organized, right? Because my professor lineage comes from like a Master Helio Gracie, Francisco Mansur, and Carlos Henrique. So he was very traditional, kind of like similar with the Gracie Academy. And it was impressive, like 60 people on the mat. It was like, wow, man. And then I joined the class. It was amazing too. No respect to, the Santana's Brothers School was just different, like
different environment.
Yeah, the environment. It was completely different. My professor, very charismatic guy, he said, oh, man, it's nice to meet you. I said, man, the professor came to talk to, he's a good salesman too, but like, he's
hustling as well.
Yeah. Just the fact, like, he came to talk to me, man, I made my day. Wow. And then we're like, man, how do you like, man? When I went to the desk and I asked the price, I already knew it, but it was just like, oh, it was basically nowadays, like, I would say $200. Mm-hmm. The jiu-jitsu back then was very expensive. So I went back home and I said, Mom, do me a favor. Like, she was like, how was the class? Because my parents, they didn't know the difference, especially for my father. It's just jiu-jitsu. Oh, you're already doing jiu-jitsu down the street. Like, you don't have to take a bus. I said, Mom, I went this place. It's amazing. And I really want to train over there. And she asked me the same question, like, but you're already doing jiu-jitsu, right? I said, no, Mom, you don't understand. Trust me. Let's go there. And then she went there with me, and then she was like, talk to the professor and she heard the price. She was like, and I put on my mom and I said, don't give me anything. I don't want a Christmas gift. I don't want anything. Just no new shoes, nothing. Just pay the tuition. That's all. And then, so luckily, she accepted my proposal, but she still gave me like a man. And the money was really tight back then. And she ended up paying, but always used to do like a check, but like 30 days. So sometimes the check would bounce. Uh-huh. Yes, I remember that. And they're like, my professor's wife used to come like, Andre. I was like, whoa, no. My mom, you take care of this. But like, always I had to sneak around sometimes because my mom didn't have enough money like to pay my tuition, my monthly tuition, because it was so expensive. But it was all worth it because join a school besides to learn like jiu-jitsu from A to Z. Also was for me, it was like university because number one, I learned how to to do jiu-jitsu, how to compete, and also I learned how to teach others too. So what a great investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, one of the things that you talk about often about this is the fact that you had the opportunity to teach or get into teaching early on, right? Not many had these opportunities. Talked about that. When did that start, and how, what got you interested in actually teaching? Because that experience early on probably was fundamental to
right.
the fact that you doing jiu-jitsu for a living today, right?
It's one of like funny story because I used to work like, I don't know if you guys, how you guys call here, like a messenger. Messenger, the kid used to carry the documents back in the days.
Messenger,
Messenger service.
I used to go back for work in downtown Rio de Janeiro, and I was a part of a project where kids, it's like a Lions Club.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard about?
Yeah, we know.
Like a Lions Club. So I used to work as something similar for the city of Rio de Janeiro and the state. And then all the kids to stay out of trouble, they had to go to school in the morning and then work like in the afternoon, like from 12 to 6 p.m. And as a messenger, so I used to work in the like a city hall, just put it this way. So the guy, man, my boss, the guy was so bossy, man, always in a bad mood. This like short guy. He looks like character, man. This is funny, man. One day he asked me to do some copies, like to copy a document, and they didn't have the, how do you say, the tone? What's the name of the
toner?
Toner.
The ink,
Toner.
the toner.
Yes, the ink. And the guy from like, who does the copy, he told me like, Andre, we don't have the ink. And I said, dude, you better make the copy, man, because you'll get in trouble, man. Don't joke. Because he used to make those jokes, like sometimes just because it was like peek on me, but we used to like play all the time. But that day, man, my boss was so mad. Somebody probably was like chewing him, and it was like, "Hey, go take the cop. Go make this copy right now." It's like, man, I'm gonna jerk. But okay, so grabbed the document, the papers. I went to the copy back to the sheriff's, and there's no ink. Then I came back, and then he goes like, and I said, Mister Whatever, they don't have ink. But if you don't believe what I'm telling you, you can go there by yourself and ask. He goes like, look, if I had to do by myself, I would have asked you to go. I had to, I would have go before. What are you talking about? And then we end up in an argument. It was like, man, I was like 16 years old. I was already trained in jiu-jitsu. Always used to walk around with my bag with a gi. And I said, Mother F, I'm not your freaking slave. Who you think you're talking about? And then he started to knock the wall to the guy from another department. Like, hey, this kid, he's like flipping. He's going crazy. He's about to kill me. He was so polite. He used to be a very sweet kid, but man, he got in my skin. So instead of like I said, okay, that's all. Now I'm fired. So whatever. Because I was using the money to pay my tuition. This guy, man, luckily, a lady can adopt me from the same, like, the city hall. She's like, Andre was always so sweet. No, hey, you take care of him. Man, it was the best thing ever. It was like, she was like my godmother. And I ended up working for her, right? And she used to spoil me because all my duties, the things that I had to do at work as a messenger, go to the bank. Going in another like city hall, I would do everything fast, and because I knew it always before I finished my work. So technically, officially, I had to leave by 6, but 4 p.m. was done, and I was sitting in a chair doing nothing at the table, and she would look at me like, "Are you done today?" I said, "Yes." "Is anything else?" I said, "No." I did everything that I had to do, and she's like, I know you want to train jiu-jitsu, right? Because I was like, yes, because that's all I was thinking, like all day long. And she's like, okay, you can go home. So the main guy, the vice president, used to look at me, used to see me like leave because there's several kids who would leave, who would work in the same like institution, and then he would have seen me like leaving early. He used to look at me and say, Neguinho. Back then in Brazil, it was legal to say Neguinho.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, my nickname is Negao. Andre Negao, which in the States, people are like big black or nigga, but like back then was normal. This guy used to call me Neguinho. It was like a funny way to call somebody. He was like, yeah, Neguinho, you leaving early, huh? That's so much. But he couldn't do anything because my boss is, was higher than him. Man, they changed the government changed. This guy took over. I'm just making a long story short because everything man was nice. My work's done. I knew I would leave early. I didn't even have to ask my boss. She knew it. She's like, "Are you done today?" I was like a dog, man. She's like, "Go, go, go." Man, I would take the bus and take the early evening class before the evening class. So you should train early morning, 6:30 in the morning. Go to school, getting late in school, but I already trained. I did my first morning class. Go to work, and then whenever I have a chance, I would go for the early evening class. Then stay for the evening class. So this guy took over. He's the new boss. First team, man, I saw devil, man. Like, first,
No more jiu-jitsu for you.
No
no.
more early evening
Look at
class.
me, he was sitting at the table, so we had a meeting, with all the employees. And then I was 17. And it's like, hey, Andre, by the way, Mr. Andre, it's exactly like, so you're going to work with me? I said, nope, I'm not working with you. I'm leaving. Myself. And it's like,
Fire.
excuse me? I said, no, yes, I'm fine. Man. So then I took the bus, okay? And I got so early in my school. And on the way to the school, it's kind of like kind of emotional for me because I was thinking about like what I was going to do, man. I'm gonna work at the delivery, I didn't know, but I'm still need to come up with some money to help my
You gotta
family.
pay for classes.
Man. And you think about like, man, what I'm going to do now because I'm about to, turn 18. My mom, my dad, my parents were like, you're gonna give me a hard time. And I had several friends who used to make a lot of money, like delivering like newspapers. The motorcycle in Brazil, they had a nice shoes, and they always like, showing you off. But that wasn't my thing. My thing was always jiu-jitsu, inside of my heart. And then I got early, very early in the class, in the noon class, because at the moment, like, I had started work at 12. And then I left like the meters about 12:30. 1:30 I was leaving, man, downtown of Rio. And I got on the bus. My professor's like, what are you doing here? I was still, wearing my uniform. And I said, I just quit my job. And he's like, you quit your job? He said, and he goes like, but what are you going to do? So at the time it was a blue belt. And I said, I don't know. I might deliver like newspapers. There's a good money. You work from 3 in the morning. By 7 a.m. when you deliver all the newspapers, you're fine. Man, who wants to work like 3 in the morning? Like, think about it. It's like, you're crazy. I said, no, professor, it's a great money. He looked at me and go, how much you're making before? And I told him my salary. And he said, look, you're not gonna make, I cannot promise you you're going to make a lot of money, the same amount of money in the beginning as you used to. But you can I promise you, I can teach you, I can give you a skill more than just be a fighter. If you'd like to embrace this idea, I can give you the opportunity. You ready? And I go like, sure, that was a dream, but I wouldn't never imagine he invited me to because I had so many guys ahead of me in the school. You understand?
Mhm.
But at the time, he gave me an opportunity because he knew it like from where I came from, people who I used to hang out. And it's like, man, leaving this kid, like basically, you'll be, uh, how can I say? He's not gonna end up well.
He's putting you back on the streets, maybe, right?
And he's like, no. And I said, are you sure? No. And he asked me, he said, oh, I'm down. Tell me, what do I have to do? Just be here 3 times a day, all day, 3 times a day, every day. So I was there Monday through Friday, 3 times a day, helping him like a shadow. And then Saturdays I used to stay like from early morning up to in the afternoon. And then he was teaching me how to teach. So at the time I was 17 years old. So when I turned like in 1 year, I already had my own class as a blue belt, but I'm still his assistant instructor. You understand? And if a huge part, if I became who I am, I owe a lot of this guy, Carlos Henrique, who taught me everything that I know and then how to teach. It's not only the technique itself, but handle things, about like a little bit of how to present yourself, how to talk to parents, how
Yeah,
to.
we talked to a lot of different instructors, and essentially everybody says that being good at jiu-jitsu is not the same thing as being good instructor. These are two different
Yeah,
things. And I think this is one of the most underestimated things. I think a lot of people think that once they know jiu-jitsu, whatever that means to them, they think that they can really teach well.
yeah.
And I can speak from my own experience. It's not such an easy task, is it now?
No, man. So at the time, I was ready to. When I got my black belt, it was just change the color of my belt, of course. But like I already, you know, purple belt, brown belt. I already had like my group, my students. But like basically, that's how I ended up. That's how I became like assistant instructor. I was lucky, so lucky. But thank God, I quit my job. Oh, thank God
Well,
I had this
go,
devil. Like,
going back to that office job for a second. What I learned today is that we can ask you anything as long as we don't ask you to make copies, because that just doesn't go well.
but man, he was so rude. He wasn't like, he wasn't polite. It wasn't something like, would you please grab the paper? He goes like, hey, Andre, I'll make you copy. And I go like, what a jerk, man. I took a deep breath. I said, man, this guy, man, for 1 minute, I said, man, if I see you in the street, I started to threaten, start to knock the walls. But so,
What makes a good instructor? What do you think makes a good instructor after all these years of doing it?
love what you do, because I don't do jujitsu, even though we are running a business, but you must love what you do. If you ask me, like, would you do something different? No. Unless we're talking about, like, you have a family, you have to feed your family. Yes, I would do it. I would do anything, but like, you must love what you do. And regardless how many people, and then if you, if you really want to know if the instructor loves what he does, he doesn't like stage. It doesn't matter how many people. Of course, it's good to have a big class,
Mm-hmm.
okay? But for me, it doesn't matter if I teach to one person or 40.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of a story. We had Jeff Curran on, and when he first started his place, he would talk about, nobody would show up, brand new school, and he would go out, he'd be leaving and he'd be in his car and somebody would pull in the parking lot. And that person would say, "Oh no, don't worry about it." And he's like, "No, no, 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 no. You showed up. We're going inside, right? We've got a class." And he would teach to that one person. And
Yeah,
that shows that the level of commitment, maybe.
yeah, that's for me. That makes a huge difference because I had opportunity to do like so many other things. Now I'm involved in other business, but always I make clear to everybody my main job. I'm a jiu-jitsu instructor. You know, that's it. Uh, because that's something like nobody can take away from me. That's the skill that I have. We have, and but you must love, like, if you love what you do versus, like, I had like people like come and like, you know instructors like, oh, just one guy. I was a class, but just two people showed up. And so what? It was just today, but tomorrow will be different, right?
Mm-hmm.
10, 12 people, 10, 20 people. But like, people like to, some people, they like more to show off, to show like the power. They're not there because they think it is cool, just cool. It's fun uh, to be the star, right? That's my,
Well,
I don't know.
I think when you're an instructor and if you have a low turnout on any particular day, sometimes it does feel like a little ego hit, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's coming and you start getting in your head, why aren't they coming? Well, maybe they just couldn't, who knows? There's a million reasons why people don't show up to class. But yeah, if you put in the effort for those 2 or 3 that did show up,
Mm-hmm.
what are you going to learn too, right? You're probably going to learn something. It's almost like giving a semi-private class, and you're going to walk away with some knowledge too. So I don't know if there's any instructors out there who are having a hard time, man. Just,
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, what do you think is the hardest thing about being an instructor? Let me rephrase. What's the hardest thing about being good instructor?
People come like to like me going to your school. If you go to your school, it'd be very respectful because that's who I am. That's how I teach my students to be respectful, to follow the etiquette of the school, even though whatever school they go, like even they don't have those etiquette like we have in Chicago and all Brazil 21 affiliate schools. But like, just look around, don't invite people to train and then. But anyways, my point is, people come to test themselves because they know you're a good instructor and you have you made it like a good competitors too, good athletes, whatever. And they want to, and you get the feeling of they want to test themselves. It's not prove to you how good they are, but like it's almost I had been through like in sparring was almost like the world championship finals. Like, man, what are you trying to do?
yeah.
So yes, but now what I see, the way how you see like jiu-jitsu, everyone's learning like it's not one source. It's not Professor Thomas showing a technique for his students, like by videos, which is very a good source of. But if you see on YouTube, everyone now teaches everything, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
You see all those flash movements, but if you're trying to do it, it doesn't work. That's what,
I feel like there's a reoccurring incident
on this podcast. Yeah.
And this podcast, everybody talks about is like, look, I found this. Can you show me how to do it? I was like, oh.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, no,
I think so.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But do you think that? So listen, you've been on the mat for what now? 30 plus years?
Yeah, 30 plus. Yes.
30 plus. So you started way before this cool stuff really kind of was born. There was no YouTube back then. There was no videos. You probably, I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was no books. If there were any books, there were just few, right? Because I started in 2000 and I know there were like 3 books. So I'm kind of thinking 10 years earlier, there was probably barely any, right?
Yeah.
Today, you can get jiu-jitsu anywhere, anytime, from essentially anyone, right? You can get it on your phone, from YouTube to different subscription services, DVDs. I mean, it's everywhere.
Right.
You think jiu-jitsu today is easier than it was before?
Yes and no.
Explain. What does that mean?
Because it's like we just recently, this past weekend, our student, Vinny, brown belt, okay? He just, brown belt, featherweight, adult. He just won the no-gi Pan Ams, right? But he moved to, you brought him from our project in Brazil since like it was in 2017. He always was almost like getting close, like losing like a semifinal, quarterfinal. Like the kid's so talented, hard work kid. And I was like, man, your time will come, and you never, give up. Great. But one thing I told him from the beginning, because he started in our institution, like in Brazil when he was 12 years old. Now he's a grown man. But like when he came to States, all he would do is just those flash movements, like berimbolo, 50-50. He would go for double pull. He would hesitate to stay on top. And always, like I said, look, you don't need to play like us. You can have your okay, keep your style, but just add something. learn how to pass guard. I'm not saying you don't know how to pass. I'm saying like you don't need to be like everybody else, because now if you see the light divisions from like rooster up to light, all the games almost the same.
Yep.
Right?
It is.
And like Vinny, you don't have to be like everybody else. There you go. This past weekend, everybody was pulling guard. He was going for the double pull, but he was accepted top game. He's not only like winning by advantage, but he passed all the guards. And it was because he understood. I said, nobody in your division, like just a few people in your division, accepted the top game and trying to pass. You understand? So now, when he realized that, instead of trying to play like everybody else and do everything with, the same thing that everybody's doing, he's doing something completely the opposite. For instance, pass with both knees on the ground. That's old school. I don't have to get on my feet. Only if you want. That, helps. Because the way how people are playing guard nowadays kind of forces you to do this too, like leg drag, X pass, those things. But those guard players, they get confused if you put your both knees on the ground, because for instance, like there's no bearing ball. I'm not saying the bearing ball is not effective. I'm not saying 50-50 is not effective. No, everything that is important is still jiu-jitsu. But kind of like prevent the other guy from applying those things. Can you follow me?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Essentially,
absolutely.
what you're saying is because everybody does it and is available everywhere, everybody follows the same path. And the more you disrupt that path, now you have the upper hand because nobody else sees it. And it's difficult, I guess, to see it because it's all in our eyes, on the phones, on YouTube, all the social media, right? Am I following correct?
Yes, perfect. We are on the same page. So basically, Vini had a great, like a tournament, 4-match. First match, he won by like 10 points. Second match by 12 points. Semifinal, he submitted a kid. I mean, it was an easy match.
Yeah, it's a great result, yeah.
And then the final, the last semifinal, final, he was able to submit, but like all the matches, he passed, he played on top. It wasn't something like they just pull and he has set the top game. So I think the problem nowadays, it is everybody wants to do the same thing because so many information. And I want to be like you. Oh, I want to be like Tom. Like I have to, I can take a little bit of your style, but I have to be more creative. Even though it looks like people are being creative, but no, they're just copying and doing the same thing. And when you find somebody who's something a little bit different, does it change the whole thing?
Yeah.
Follow me? Because
I think
our source is just like to learn. I had to go to a tournament. My professor, we all would go, but my professor would be like watching. Remember, like, hey, I saw this match of Robson Moura. There's a cartwheel. Or Leo Vieira did the cartwheel against Robson. Remember that? It was a super fight. And then we started doing this. Or somebody like playing half guard. You understand? That's how they're doing. You have to wait until the next.
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, we had Dracolino. We were talking to Dracolino, and he was saying way back in the day, like first of all, there was the only way you could find out about anybody doing anything in tournaments. There was a magazine in Brazil that everybody watched the scores, right? And that was delayed by like months, or you had to go to the tournament and see yourself. And there was no other way to figure it out. And the moment somebody introduced something new, it threw a curveball. No, it was like, whoa, what is this guy doing, right?
Yes.
So that's how things got born, right? New things, new concept, new strategies. Today, everything is by far more visible, which is great. It gives us access. I tell my students, when I was doing jiu-jitsu, when I was white and blue belt, we didn't have a phone where we could look things up.
Oh.
You have instant access to the entire world of jiu-jitsu for free, essentially, right? Yeah. But at the same time, dissecting and weeding out the garbage that comes with it is really difficult, and it's really up to us to make sure the quality things are important and we stay focused.
And I think like it's not legit, but the experience is going to, whoever, like the instructor who has more experience as a competitor, or like, the match time, they're going to make a difference, like, on the community, on the industry. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like everything else. Because you can beat experience, right? There's no way.
Absolutely. 100%. Well, we've been at this for like an hour,
We
or
have.
hour plus. So before we wrap this up, we have a little surprise for you. We do this to everybody, so don't
Okay.
run away just yet. But we have 5 questions for you. We didn't tell you about this. These are surprise questions. Some of them are funny, some of them are more serious. Try to answer them first thing that comes to your mind, and it always generates interesting end to the whole conversation. Gary's going to take a lead on that. It will be fun.
Yeah. All right. So, what was it like the first time you stepped on the mat?
When was the
What
first-
was it like?
What did it
What
feel
was
like?
when you stepped on the jiu-jitsu mat? So you had already been doing judo.
Jiu-Jitsu?
How did it feel? Yeah.
Scary, but empowering. Like just the fact that I was joining the type of community, especially because I heard about how powerful jiu-jitsu was.
Mhm.
Just being there, I feel like scary, but at the same time very empowering. Even the way how I was walking is completely different. It's not.
Show us how did you walk?
Yes, back
That's funny.
there.
What has been your most rewarding achievement?
On and off the mat.
I would say, to have a blast, to be able to train somebody like Hanet Stack. Okay, it was a blast because we call each other as a soulmate, and without her in my life, and vice versa, we wouldn't be here. It's not only being in the United States, but like accomplish the things that we accomplished together. Okay, and that's one of the biggest like accomplishments. And outside of the mat is to be able to use jiu-jitsu as a tool to change people's lives.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
All right. So we already talked about this. The third question is always, have you ever wanted to quit? And we already know what you went through. But real quick, just the timeline on that. How long until you were fully recovered?
16 months.
16.
16.
Yeah. So almost 2 years.
No, even less. Yes, a year. Because my first contact, like a rolling after my back surgery, was during was in my kids class with the yellow belt, Daniel. Remember the kid? Yes. I was playing half guard. Yeah, because I didn't want anybody to smash me. I said, try.
Yeah, go get a kid.
And then I started to roll with him, and like I was building, rebuilding my confidence.
Mm. And how long did it take before you were like, I'm back? I know I'm solid. I'm back 100%.
2 years, because in 2004 I was competing like in a local tournament in Niterói city, and I won the tournament. 2004. Then I won as a black belt. I got my black belt, and I told my professor, said, but because I remember going to his class and he's taking it easy on me. Man, I know the guy. I was raised by him. Man, if you blink, I know exactly what he's thinking, and he would like give him like kind of easy sparring, like a trained partner. And I was like, hey, I used to look at those guys because I would never say anything, being disrespectful to him, but like to people who would send me, I would like, look, go as hard as you can, because if I catch you, man, I'm not going to go easy on you. Because I didn't want to get like a black belt just because oh man, you're. I didn't want people to feel sorry for me.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Yeah.
I had to go twice as hard and people just to force them to go hard on me too. You understand?
Yeah, it makes sense. Describe your feelings when you received your black belt.
That's the big one.
Do you really want to hear that?
Yeah.
That's why we ask. Yes.
It was like, I remember my professor, because of this, maybe because I wasn't like, at the same time I had a lot of confidence, but I was a type of a kid, very, I don't know how to describe, but anyways, when I noticed my professor was holding me back, but that wasn't because of my surgery, okay? I was already training. Then I look at him like, and there's something Brazil, like usually like, if you learn Jiu-Jitsu, like, if you're from my generation and before, something what you never ever ask is your belt.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. Don't ask for the promotion.
Don't ask for the promotion. I mean, I'm still, my students here, they all know that. But like, I look at him because I said, like, because he wasn't like, he stopped and like, he wasn't like, Jiu-Jitsu wasn't his like the main source of income. He was just teaching a little bit. And I was like full-time Jiu-Jitsu, was my full-time job. And I was doing so well. I had a lot of students. And then he's like, and I noticed, like, I realized people from my generation who I used to compete against, they were like, black belt. I was like, but that's okay. I get it. It's his call. It's not my call. And I need to accept that. But man, one day he came to my school. And then after like, so when I finished the class, he's like, Andre, I want to talk to you. You're so cocky, man, like you don't go to my school. It was something. I was doing something. And he goes like, and I said, yeah, I'm just losing my interest in like to train. Like, losing your interest. And he's like, who do you think you are? I said, I should be black belt by now.
What did he say?
Then I made a list. Hey, look, this guy, Flavio Almeida, Ricardo Arona, this guy. They're all black belts. I'm still brown belt. It's because of my surgery, my back surgery. It's like, are you asking for a belt? He said, I'm not asking. I'm just saying. Like, yeah, it's like a kid, man. And he looked at me like, you must have a guts, man, to say something like that. I said, I'm not being disrespectful. I'm just sharing my feelings with you. That's how I feel now. And that's why for me, I don't think there's no reason for me to go there. If I have to be a brown belt forever, that's fine. I'm not going to leave your school after dedicating all these years. I'm not going to get a black belt for somebody else, but I'm just letting you know that's not right what you do with that. I mean, it is embarrassing because I would have never say something like that, because always I have so much respect for my professor. And basically he's kind of like, because when you reach the age as a teenager, joining like a martial arts school, I would say that's the best thing for like a teenager, because it's always sport. Because as long as they kind of relate, they feel comfortable, the environment is good. I would rather to have my kid expending hours, doing something positive than be on a corner or be on the phone like the new generation now. No, nowadays kids are always on the phone. And basically, he was like my old brother. Sometimes was like your father, even though I have my parents, was well raised. But like, man, this guy, besides my parents, is the only person in the world I would respect. And I would have never, when I said that, but I kind of regret, but like, I already said, man, it's like,
put it back.
Man, just, you asked for this, and I'm not asking, I'm just sharing my feelings. That's how I feel, but that's okay. I'm not a creant. I couldn't leave. I have my students, I'm running my own business. I'm just staying with you because I'm loyal to you. That's all. Man, a couple months after, and we're still not talking. And I was teaching in another location. And then he came and I noticed, and then he's like, he brought some students and he goes like, I'm going to lead the class tonight. I said, oh.
This is at your school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just 1 second. Just hold on. Stay there.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Where's he going?
We lost him. And
I guess.
nobody's at the door. This has to be good.
The box.
Oh, he's getting a box.
I was going to show you like the belt, what he gave to me.
Yeah.
And he came and he said like, well, I'm going to lead the class tonight. Honestly, because I know this guy, I spent so much time, years next. I knew it. He was going to promote me. Even like when he would hide the belt, he used to put it out.
Yeah. You know all the tricks.
I think every student knows the belt.
Right.
And it was like, and then he started to send people like to row with me because he knew it. I told him, I said, look, don't give me a belt. Don't feel sorry for me. I just want to get my belt when I deserve. I want to earn that. Mm-hmm. And he was like, yeah, that's okay. But then, we get in the point where I thought he was holding me back for another reason. I ended up started taking personal because I was already trained. Anyway, and he called my name. We line up. He goes, line up. Okay, today. And he made a speech. He gave me lecture. I know all these words, what he was going to say. And then when he was tying my belt, he looked at me whispered in my ear and said, are you happy now? And I go well, that was me. Well, you just changed the color of the belt because why they belt was a black.
Oh,
No, I didn't say that, but it was I was proud, but it was I was happy. Proud to being awarded finally getting my black belt from my professor. I have been waiting for this moment since I was 13 years old. Now I'm 24. It's crazy, man. And then for me, that's my life. That meant a lot to me, man. Was the world. It was just official, but I said that, so just change the color. You look at me in the face, what a jerk.
Oh man.
Then I said, thank you so much, but I was very thankful and honored. But he gave me his belt, so he took his belt off, and he's like, oh, he didn't hide his belt. Wow. He took it off his own belt and put it my.
Do you still have the belt?
Yes. Yeah. So just a few people, he gave his own belt. So that's to me the means the world.
That's unbelievable.
That's a great story. That's an amazing story.
Here's the last question: do you wash that belt?
No.
He gave you? No.
You don't
I knew the answer already.
We clean the mats really well. We make sure never a long time ago, we had a ringworm case in our school, but other than that, everything. But I'm still old school. To me, is
no judgment whatsoever. Listen, some of us do, some of us don't. Life is good, but it's always interesting. I think that's one of the most controversial questions in Jiu-Jitsu, isn't it? Do you wash your belt? No. Yes.
Yes. That's everybody is very has a very strong stance.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. Listen, Professor, thanks for being here. We've been this for a long time. We don't want to keep you way past the time, but before we end this great conversation, where can people find you? The ones who listen to you, and we didn't even touch on the nonprofit stuff that you guys do in Brazil for the communities, right? Hanette talked about it quite extensively on with our conversations with her. So if anybody's listening and want to find out more information, make sure you dip into Hanette's episode. But as far as you are concerned, where can people find you? Website, social media? Are you anywhere? Are you available?
Yeah. Brazil 21 School of Jiu-Jitsu. Brazil 21 School of Jiu-Jitsu, or Brazil 21 Chicago, okay? Or they can find me on my Instagram account, Andre Negão BJJ. Andre Negão BJJ.
Fabulous.
Perfect.
Fabulous. Well, listen, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing the amazing stories and amazing thoughts. This was quite insightful for me. I made tons of notes. So I love the fact that you were open enough to share some of those personal stories, because some of them are pretty deep, especially when it comes to your injuries. And at least I know not to ever ask you my copies for me. So I know that. That's for sure.
If you do, make sure you've got some toner.
Yes.
It's all because of the toner.
Yeah.
Or just ask him nicely. Ask him nicely.
I guess
that's all that matters, right?
I guess
the guy was disrespectful. That's the only problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, man.
All right.
All right.
Well, thanks for the chat again, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having
Beautiful.
me.
All right.
Thank you. Peace.
You guys take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to ROL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.